Hi, I'm Brian Grant, and you're listening to On Time, the Brian Grant Foundation podcast about living with Parkinson's. If you want to know more about Brian Grant Foundation, go to briangrant.org.
This podcast series is presented by AbbVie.
If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you know that regular exercise, a nutritious diet, and other healthy habits can have a positive impact on your Parkinson's symptoms and quality of life. But even with this knowledge, it can be hard to make healthy choices. When life gets tough, it's easy to neglect our physical and mental health. So in this episode, we're going to talk about the benefits and challenges of adopting a healthy lifestyle. I'm here with co-host Brian Grant, and we're going to start by talking about exercise. So before we get into this deep dive into your PD exercise program, let's just talk a little bit about what was training for the NBA like.
Well, Heather, let me tell you, it was an experience like no other. I thought, and each team is different. Each team is different in their training methods. But up until I went to Miami, I thought that college was the toughest training sessions I'd ever been to. You know, having to get up before class, work out, run suicides, things like that. The NBA, the first two teams, you know, there wasn't a huge emphasis on being in shape unless you came in out of shape, then you were in trouble. But when I went to Miami to play, let me tell you something. I learned what hard work really, truly was because I had never worked hard ever until I went there. It was just, you know, Pat Riley would challenge us physically and mentally each and every day. And if you were weak, you were out of there. So it was tough. It was a good experience. Not something I ever really want to do again, but it was a great experience.
I imagine that critic never leaves you because the bar was so high then. And do you remember how in college you thought it was so much work? Like, this is the hardest it will ever get. That was the easy part for many of us. But how do you train now, and how is it different?
You know, training now can be tricky, especially for someone like us who are athletes or any athlete out there, you know, dealing with Parkinson's or dealing with any disorder or disease that affects your training. I think the biggest one for me is the mentality. I've got a mentality that was to drive hard, push hard, and get fast results. And it served me for many years. But then I forgot that, you know, the older I get, the harder you got to work and the less you receive. And that's really been tough for me because, you know, I would begin and be going forward and all of a sudden get frustrated or tell myself, I don't have to train like this anymore. What am I doing? You know, and then it gave me an excuse to just fall back. So anybody out there, whether you have Parkinson's or not, but especially to the Parkinson's community, just stick with it. Do a little bit at a time. And if you're an athlete and you only know hard, the tricky part is going to be consistency, not crazy efforts, but just consistent.
Right. We can't all be like Jimmy Choi, who, by the way, trains like an animal every day. He is up at that gym working out, as witnessed by many friends who I stay in touch with, who he helps. He's such a down-to-earth guy. He always invites him into his training. Jimmy Choi, for those of you listening, is the Michael J. Fox fitness expert who's on TikTok and all over the internet. He's doing wild things. He was also an American Ninja. So I'm just mentioning that kind of training. This adaptation is important for us with Parkinson's, though, Brian. And do you have times when you don't exercise? And if so, like, how does it make you feel?
Yeah, you know, our foundation, we take exercise and nutrition very seriously. But in saying that, I don't always take it as seriously as I should. And, you know, I'm human. I'm just like anybody else. I get lazy. I mean, we've gone through the pandemic and I, you know, hate to say it, but I picked up 35, almost 40 pounds during the pandemic. And as I was eating that ice cream or eating those cookies or sitting down watching another episode of whatever, I go by that mirror when I go to the bathroom and I'd be like, that's all right. I'll work it off tomorrow. That's all right. I'll get it off next month. Until I finally one day went and said, oh my gosh, what has happened to me? And there's nothing wrong with gaining weight, folks. I mean, it's a natural thing. But for me to see the transformation come on that quickly, that's when I kind of pumped the brakes and got back to it. But now I'm to the point where I've put in weeks, but I'm not getting the results that I used to get. And that's because of age. It's because of age, and it's because I don't train as hard as I used to. So,
and our recovery time is much greater.
Much greater. And, a lot of times when I have a hard workout in me, I'll do a hard workout and then I'm out for 2 days because I pulled my hamstring or my calf muscle sore.
We can do that just getting out of bed.
I know, the lower back.
How do you get back into it? Like when you're so exhausted? I mean, what is your motivation?
My motivation, the one good thing Michael J. Fox talked to me about was vanity. You have to lose the vanity. And I truly feel like I've finally chipped away at enough of that, because you kind of got to be insane and vain when you play in a professional sports just to keep your position, because someone's always trying to take it from you. And so you kind of get this rah me, and that doesn't just go away when the basketball goes away. It sticks with you, and a lot of times it becomes something bad. And so in this case, it can be good if I'm getting up consistently doing just a little bit that I want to do. But anytime I want to challenge somebody, like when my kids come on, Jaden and Elijah and Ronnie and Jonathan, but we go to the gym, it's like I got to show them that I'm Brian Grant dad. And they end up busting me up and having to walk me out, carry me to the car. I done pulled this, my back's hurting, the next strain. I'm not young anymore. So I got to take that beast and put it away in the box and throw it in the ocean for a while.
Your chiropractor thanks you.
I thank him
for the work.
Yeah.
It's true though. The more we can move, the more we can move. It's that simple. With Parkinson's, if we don't move, we become like the Tin Man, oil can. We cannot function without moving. And yet it's counterintuitive when we're so wiped out and so much in pain. The chronic pain speaks to us in a way that tells us not to work out, but we have to, right? You got
to keep moving. I mean, that's the one thing. Unless you're bedridden and you can't move, then that's something. But move while you can, because the one thing I hope that this pandemic has taught everybody is that we don't know how long we have. We don't know how long we have here on this earth. And there's been so many times that I was like, I'll just do it later. Oh, I'll do it tomorrow, or I'll do it next week. And then during that time, I lose somebody, somebody close to me. And, I'm sure they thought there were a lot of things that they would do next week too, but they're not going to be able to do it. And I don't want to be that person. I want to be that person that makes a commitment to myself or to others and follows through with it, because I went through 3 or 4 years where people just didn't know if I was going to come through or not.
And just as a quick aside, that grief and that loss is constant in our community, especially. We see the giants fall. I mean, I think of Muhammad Ali as an example. Speaking of workouts, I've been told by many experts, including Davis Finney and you, to do something high intensity every day, but I'm not really working out like that. I bought a stationary bike. I joined the Fight Club, which is the UFC gym. And every day I hike and I stretch. I used to work out so much more. I used to hit the bag. I could do burpees, not anymore, really. So there's an inertia though. When I stop working out and I don't sort of use that habit every day and that practice every day, you lose so much, but we get so tired by the end of the day. So, when I'm off, it feels like there's wet cement drying around me. Like I'm walking through peanut butter or something like that. It's just the last thing we want to do is exercise. But, even if you're just in a chair, like a wheelchair or using a walker, you can do those stretches. There are all levels of intensity available on the internet 24/7. It's available to all. And some of it is free. Most of it is. But the last thing we want to do is exercise. So you're right. I think of my children, like you just mentioned yours. And I think of a person who might be 10 years younger than me, who I might want to be hanging out with. How do we keep up with people? And then the depression on the horizon. So when that depression creeps in, do you work out as an antidote for that too?
I try to. And let me not correct you, but change my thinking on things. High intensity, I still agree with, but the definition of high intensity has changed. High intensity to me used to be 317s under 65 seconds and, 50 push-ups within this amount of time, or I got to do another 317s, lines side to side. Now high intensity to me is I'm going to do 30 minutes on the bike, try to get my heart rate up to this point. After that, I'm going to go and do some circuit training with lightweight things that work my muscles and tendons, but it's not going to tear something, like high intensity lifting. So I just wanted to correct that really fast and just say, I believe in high intensity, but that you got to change the definition of it to fit who you are and where you're at in life.
So these cycles that you go through, like you'll be on a roll with a regular diet and, the exercise, and then you lapse for a while and it makes you feel kind of terrible and you get back on again. And you've been so open about your struggles with depression. But when was the first time that you realized you might be dealing with a very serious kind of depression that we all experience at some point to varying degrees? But when was the first time you realized it?
First time I realized that I may be depressed, just only that I thought I may be, was after I retired and the season kicked off and I wouldn't go to any games. And, 1 week of not going out turned into 2 weeks, into 3 weeks, only going downstairs to, grab food or whatever. And just my whole attitude changed. I had a routine, but it was a depression routine. I would get up, get my big bowl of Captain Crunch, sit down, turn it on whatever channel the hunting channel was. And that was my routine every day. Eat that bowl, watch that, sleep, wake up, maybe take a shower today, maybe not. And then when Gina got home, complain about everything that was going wrong in life. And so after like 3 months of that, she finally said, you need to get help. You need to get help. And that's kind of like the last thing you want to hear. You're not going to tell me that I'm depressed. The problem's with you. You're not doing this, or you're staying out, or you're doing. And so, my kids saw that, and probably after about, I think it was 4 or 5 months, that's when I said, okay. And so I went and was evaluated, and I was clinically depressed. And I started taking meds and seeing a psychologist and a psychiatrist, which after about 9 months, I started coming around.
Great. By its very nature, it blinds us. We can't really see ourselves in it. So, of course, we're going to point outward and not accept that responsibility for whatever we have going on. But much of this is chemical. Much of the depression we experience with Parkinson's is not causal. In fact, there's very little out here that's the main problem. It just adds to it, I find. How do you manage your depression? Like, how do you get sort of like happier or feeling better in each moment?
Well, I take antidepressant once a day. I believe it's duloxetine. But I've had my share of seeing psychologists, which really helped. I'm not currently seeing one, but if I felt as though I wasn't able to handle everyday situations that are coming my way, I know when I need to talk about it.
Does talking help, or is that a modality that helps you?
It is, because I'll be saying everything that's going on, and he or she can recognize where the issues are coming from. And so we can go there and try to deal with the root of the problem, because 9 times out of 10, it's not the problem I'm throwing out there. There's something else that's eating at me, and I can't see it because I'm so caught up in all this other stuff.
Yeah, it's really hard to get to the root of the root when you can't see around yourself. It's easy for me to dole out advice to everybody else, though I have an answer for everybody. Just ask me. Right?
Yeah.
Like with our kids, they come and they have their problems. And finally, my daughter turned to me once and she's like, you need to walk your talk. And I'm like, you know what? She's right. I needed that call out because I told her to be, positive about something. And she's like, wait a second. So it's true. We can get down and not know how down we are. So I don't really suffer from depression as much as crippling anxiety. It'll keep me inside the house, looking out the window, watching all the other kids play and have a good time, making those comparisons like, oh, there's the world going by. And here I am inside feeling isolated and alone. So I fall into this cycle of sort of like comparative thinking and judgment, and our thoughts can become our enemy. So we have to remember our thoughts are not real, that are known to cause psychosis and all kinds of things like that. So we have to stay on top of that stuff. It can be very real. It's comparative thinking as well. So I don't always know when I'm experiencing it, though. Do you have a touchstone in your life that helps you realize someone you can trust?
I do. I mean, it's just a feeling. And it's also me looking back over maybe the past 3 to 5 days and seeing, have I been doing what I said I was going to do? Have I showed up to the places I said I was going to show up to? Am I calling people back? I mean, that's one of the biggest things right there with my friends. If I don't call them back, they all start calling one another. It's like, is Brian okay? Because he's not calling me back. Well, he said, well, I ain't talked to his bud either. Maybe we need to call one of the kids. And then they call one of the kids and they call me. And it's like, no, I've been in this series. And you go, well, you need to call Tyrese back or you need to call Pat back, just because they're worried about you. And I hate the fact that people worry about me like that, but I understand because I put them in that situation, because they love me. They're, the same as I love them, I do anything for them. They're like, if I'm not calling and I'm not looking for you and something happens, I'm not going to be able to live with myself,
You are so lovable and you have so many friends and family members and acquaintances who just adore you. And they want to see you be okay. But we all need times when we go in our cave, our proverbial cave. I get to the point sometimes where I realize I'm not even in reality. I'm sort of perceiving things from a place of a little bit of suspicion or paranoia even. And then I know I need to check my meds. So I always check in with my touchstones, like I mentioned, trusted people who knew you before maybe, or who know kind of how we are. And then I have to sort of cycle out of that negative thinking. I'll always ask myself, is this true? Just serve as an inquiry, or I'll lean on some spiritual teachers like the ones we talked about. And so I wonder, I find that having a purpose and something to look forward to is everything when it comes to mental health. So these people that you talk with, and then how do you create moments in your life, Brian, to look forward to? That's really the big question.
I look forward to almost anything that involves my children. I'm a new grandfather. I have a baby granddaughter named Ileana, my oldest son, Amani. As a matter of fact, she was over last night, and I look forward to those visits of having her come over and seeing the next generation that stems from my mother and father to me, to him, and now little Ileana. That's one of the main things. And then also, being able to participate as much as I possibly can with the foundation. Katrina does such a wonderful job. It's like, where can I help out? Because she's got it all covered.
She's truly amazing.
She is amazing. She is amazing.
I want a Katrina.
She is amazing. So just having things to look forward to. But sometimes even that's not enough, and there's other things that I have going on in my life that, keep me going. Like, I get up at 6:30 every morning, make meetings and see people and talk to them.
Is it hard? Because so many people look up to you, they forget that you too need support. Like they come to you for the answers probably in many ways. You help advocate for people with Parkinson. You have a foundation that improves the quality of the daily lives of perhaps thousands, millions. We don't know how far our reach can be. So do you find that service helps your mental health as well?
It does, because I'm always learning something new. People sometimes tend to think that because there's a Brian Grant Foundation that I know all this stuff. And I tell you, that was one of the reasons why I'd have anxiety. I really wanted to talk to you, Heather, but I just knew that I did not know enough. And you would just tell me all these wonderful things that are going on, things to look out for. And I felt like I'm so gracious, I'm so grateful for that, but I wish I had something to add to it, so that's a good thing.
Your humility is unbelievable. You don't realize that your very presence helps us, helps me. I need you in my life. Thank you for saying that. So are there people that you lean to these people, but for me, having a spiritual life and having a talk with God, I was just listening to Stevie Wonder this morning, have a talk with God. And also I Told Jesus by Roberta Cleopatra Flack. And I love that middle name, Cleopatra. And, everybody has their spiritual practices, but having this and still breathing and simply being grateful inspire mental health. Don't you find, meditating can quiet the mind. When I'm able to quiet my mind, I can be of greater service to others. And you've always been in service to others, Brian. You've always given back from day one. You've never taken anything for granted. I highly admire you for that. We both work with many organizations and advocates, and that service really helps us feel good. It helps me feel good about myself, certainly. And good, clean living, exercise, diet, physical, mental health, healthy diet, fresh leafy greens and veggies.
Mm.
Diet can be hard, especially if you don't shop or cook. And how can we cook with these shaky hands? It's hard. So have you ever used like a meal service?
I have. I'm sort of on a meal service right now. The guy that's training me, he's also a chef, so he cooks up meals for me, two meals a day.
I'll be right over.
I tell you what, it's a wonderful service, but you got to make yourself eat it because, you may skip one and then there's some extra or something tastes better than the other thing. You eat all those up and like, man, I wish I had some more of those. But the meal service is great because I'm not a chef. I mean, when I cook for myself, that means I'm cooking either oatmeal, eggs,
Captain Crunch.
No, I gave up the cereal. I gave up the cereal. And it would have been Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I graduated to Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And then using the grill, which I haven't even used yet. I had my old one, took a dive on me, so I had to get a new one. So I haven't even taken the cover off of it.
How does it feel when you're eating well?
It feels good. Everything seems to work a little better. I'm less bloated. And just overall knowing that I'm eating healthy does something to me.
Yeah. So it affects your mood and also, therefore, the depression and all the other things. Diet is so important with Parkinson's. Like Dr. Lori Nishley talks about this. We have so many nutritionists in our realm. And I'm sure you listen to all that advice as well. Nutrition exercise is so important for the physical and mental health. And the Brian Grant Foundation website has so many resources to help get us started. So everybody check that out. Sleep is also really important. I don't even know what sleep is. Can somebody tell me what this thing sleep is?
I've been able to sleep lately. I'm sorry to say that, Heather, but I've definitely went through my bouts with insomnia. I think the longest bout I had was maybe 3 months. And I was just catching a little bit of sleep here and there, but couldn't really put it together, And for me, I don't know about for you, but when I'm not sleeping, I'm just not the best person to be around because I'm like a zombie, basically. And, everything's so cloudy. I don't really want to do anything. I just want to try to figure out why I can't sleep.
Yeah, I get delusional or I can fall asleep anywhere, but I'll pop awake. What I find is I often get only a couple of hours of sleep at night, really. And I'll wake up sweating from menopause. Sorry for the TMI, but seriously, ladies, let's talk about menopause. That's really fun to deal with along with Parkinson. Or dystonia will wake me up, which is an involuntary muscle contraction and a twisting, extremely painful. And I take more something for that, and then take another pill for that and for the other thing. And then, I'll just lie there thinking about things like, remember that thing I did in third grade? That was mean. I should call that person, apologize. Your mind can really ramp up at night. They call it the sundowner syndrome with Alzheimer's. I remember that about my dad. So I'll just lie there, unable to sleep or get back to sleep. But working out can help us sleep a little longer. We know that, really exhausting ourselves, which shouldn't take too long. And then Epsom salt baths or, just trying to quiet your mind with some meditation, prayers. I write a lot, which I can write the situation from all sides, and that really helps calm down. Even if you're not going to send it or share it, it doesn't matter. I highly recommend writing things out from your point of view. It turns out that we are unreliable narrators of the truth, because we all have sort of like shady memories when it comes to like emotional things. So just remember to write things down if you can. When I'm sleep deprived, I get weepy and emotional. And so I'll just take a nap or curl up with a book. Do you ever take naps?
Well, I take what I think is a nap, but it's never enough, especially when I'm going through the insomnia. But now that I am sleeping, yeah, I mean, it's usually around between the hours of 3 and 5. If I'm sitting around watching TV, I'll be watching a show and then I'll wake up, look around, and I've been asleep for 45 minutes.
Right, you're on season 6 of something like One Tree Hill. You're like, wait, how did I get in here? What's going on? What keeps you from sleeping well?
A lot of times it's just thoughts racing through my head, things that I have no control over, but trying to figure them out, trying to figure out how I'm going to control them when I know damn well I can't.
We don't have control of our bodies.
No, we don't.
What helps you sleep better?
If I've had a good workout early in the afternoon and then I have a decent meal, doesn't have to be a big one, but just, a decent, healthy meal. And then sometimes, I don't know if you've ever been on YouTube, they've got these things that last for like 11 hours where it's rain, thunder, but it makes your TV go black. So it's like thunder and rain in the bedroom, and that puts me right out.
That or lo-fi music, they call it. Just real
lo-fi.
Simple, no extremes. Beverages can keep us awake too. I'm not just talking about caffeine, but sugar. I love coffee. I don't know how the Mormons do it. I really don't. Caffeine can affect our ability to fall asleep and stay asleep. And also the urinary incontinence is really fun with a lot of caffeine. Alcohol can make it a lot harder to get a good night's sleep. And that disrupts the sleep cycle, leading to drowsiness and fatigue for everyone the next day, not just us, of course. We're not special. It can worsen and even cause depression and anxiety. Alcohol is a depressant, as it turns out. So last year, I decided to stop drinking, and I'm in recovery. I felt like I didn't have a choice. I was either going to stop drinking and live well and be present with those around me, or lose everything. How about you?
I too decided to quit drinking last year, December 21st, 2020.
Awesome. Over a year?
Yeah, a year and a month. And it's really helped me to be more present. I mean, just friends and family are like, you're a different person,
What made you stop?
First of all, because I don't think I'm the type of person that can just casually drink. I'm a person that once I start and it's like, okay, the party's on, let's drink it up. Let's turn back the booze. And, sometimes people take that as fun times with me, but there's been a lot of times where it wasn't so fun. And the next day it was like, hey man, maybe you need to think about how much you drink, because you said a few things and did a few things. And I'd be just appalled, because I wouldn't remember. So it was time for me to drink. I mean, look at that. It was time for me to stop drinking and go into recovery. And that's what I did.
Yeah. And our medications can cause compulsive behavior. In fact, we know the agonists do. It's a fact. So even if we aren't predisposed to addiction, we'll certainly have trouble with that once we start taking these agonists. And we need them to help us move, as it turns out. Movement and pleasure reward are tied in together. So this compulsive behavior becomes a big problem. And, I just didn't have a choice. Like I said, I wanted to live better and love better. I kept pushing people out of my life, and I was such a hypocrite. And one thing that recovery is helping me with is to see my side of things and to see what it was like for everybody around me with my anger. I'm not angry anymore. And I get to hang out with people like you, which is really, really cool. This would never happen if I kept drinking. So I can't stop at one either. One of anything. One chip. Who can eat one chip? So, I was angry about Parkinson, so I felt like I deserved a drink. I deserved to lighten up. I deserved another something. And to, that was my excuse. Well, I have Parkinson's, which is ridiculous. And I thought it was calming my nerves. It was actually jacking me up. Even though the tremor was slightly less during that first drink, all the witness and everything leaves after the second. So I realized it wasn't helping. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't even here in my body. And it turns out I love being sober. My chill's back. The meds work better. I'm trying to live with intention. I still screw up every day. That's okay. It's a practice, not a perfection. But it's not for everyone. What positive effects has it had specifically on your health? You've mentioned your relationships and your health.
Well, with my health, my meds, certain meds don't mix well with alcohol. And I found that out the hard way when I went through a 4-day bout of hallucinations. And it was pretty terrifying. And the one thing about being in recovery for me is that I've learned that the problem wasn't alcohol. There's another problem. It's just a byproduct of something else that's going on with me. And I've been able to really narrow down my character defects and turn them over to God. And that has helped me tremendously, especially with my relationships with other people, because I was harboring resentments from years that I didn't even know were affecting me now. Stupid things too, other things that were major, but a lot of little things, and was able to make amends for those things. And just, quality of life became better, not only for me, but for those around me.
What a perspective that we've gained from this. If there is any silver lining to our situation, we can do this work together more intentionally. I also find people get hung up on the word God. So I'm just going to add, it doesn't matter what we call higher power, what we call ourselves even. It doesn't even matter that we're calling what we experience Parkinson's. We just know that we are challenged in a different way than some of our peers. And so we must sort of overcompensate or be aware of certain things so we can communicate better with our loved ones. Otherwise, it gets a little messy. So we've talked a lot about the ups and downs of trying to lead a healthy and happy life. Do you have any parting advice for our listeners or anything that you wanted to add?
Just enjoy each and every minute of life. Spending that time with your children, with your friends. And if you have disagreements or people out there that you feel may be your enemy, do whatever you can do to remedy that situation from your side of the street, because you can't control how someone's going to view you, but you can control how you view that person. And, just be thankful. When I was diagnosed, I think I had so much to be thankful for up to that point that I thought, man, look at what's happening to me. I forget all about making it out of Georgetown, Ohio, going to college, being able to play in the NBA. It was about me right now and how it's not fair. I have Parkinson, but I'm really grateful for the life that I've been given, because not only do I get to be there with my kids and friends, but I get to help a generation with this disorder or disease called Parkinson's, and I get to work with people like you.
Right. Thank you. When we stop shaking with rage, people can hear us a little bit better, as it turns out. And I find that I used to say, here's to the health of your enemies' enemies, and I would cheer people. And now I say, may my enemy have everything they want. And I really mean that a little more now, most of the time. So the truth is, it's impossible to lead a perfectly healthy life. We're human beings. We're messy. We're chaotic. There's a lot going on at once. This isn't happening in a vortex. What's most important is that we try to do the best we can as often as we can, prioritizing the things that matter and let the rest go. And remember what motivates you. For me, I want to go to concerts. I want to meet my grandkids someday like you. I want to be there with you, I want to look good in my jeans. I'm trying to get the most out of life, because you have a lot more life to live. Thank you for listening, everyone, and join us next week for the final episode in this series, where we'll be talking about diversity in the Parkinson's community. Stay tuned.
The Brian Grant Foundation provides tools to improve the well-being of people with Parkinson's. You can help us make a difference in the lives of people with Parkinson's by donating online at briangrant.org. AbbVie is dedicated to helping people with Parkinson's get more on time in the day. AbbVie is the presenting sponsor of this podcast series. Visit briangrant.org/podcast to learn more. And a special thank you to Raphael Sadiq for providing the music for this podcast. This podcast is produced by Brian Griggs and Griggs Productions. Learn more at griggsproductions.com.